Great. Well, good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Baldwin with Esri, and this is the third in our series of a campus operations webinar. Audience is really geared towards the administrative side, the campus operations side for higher education and for schools. And so this week we're doing one on building a mobile workforce and getting decision support into the field. And I'm really excited. We've got some great presenters lined up. We've got Seth from Clemson, Grant, Mari, and James from the University of Arizona, and they're going to be walking through a couple of great, applications and configurations that both of them and their teams have been working on. And I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Jade and Jim for presenting last week. It was a great series, and the video is up for anyone who would like to see it. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you have any questions at all, your microphones are going to be muted. So please just put those into the chat box and we'll get to them. Also, there'll be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We'll also be answering some questions after each of the speakers completes. So if you have any questions at any time, point is just enter them in at any point and we'll make sure we're getting to them. The webinar and the slides will be available afterwards. So we'll get out the video, we'll get out the slides so that you can access those and share them with others. And there'll also be a survey following the webinar. And I've said this a couple times, but please complete the survey. This helps drive the type of content we're delivering, and it will help us refine the message and what we're getting out to you during this series and in future webinars that we present. So it's really important, and we read every single one of those. So quickly, I just wanted to go over the goals for the series for those of you that this might be your first session. So we really just wanted to drive home the fact that GIS is more than just maps. It's about getting information to the fields. It's about sharing data with stakeholders. It's about sharing information with executives. It's about getting things done. This is also about building community. We've had some great conversations. We've had some great interactions with those and also between the presenters. It's been so fun to bring some of these people together to have them share their stories and start swapping contact information to be able to connect afterwards and continue the dialogue forwards. Another goal, a big one, is to be able to share best practices. What are certain campuses doing, and ensure that it's not all just happening in a silo, that you can start to see, you can start to share what others are doing. Start to highlight the value of enterprise GIS. And this really goes back to that first bullet, ensuring that GIS is seen more than just a map on campus and that you can do things across your entire organization. And there's really value that GIS can do in a lot of different areas. And in this webinar, it really focuses on this as well, this value of configuration versus customization. It's certainly possible to build out custom applications, but there is a lot of value and there are so many ways that you can just come in and configure things very rapidly. And so that is really driven home in this webinar. For those that missed the first two of the series, I just mentioned these are up on the web. We'll have Rosemary kind of put a link into a blog that has the recordings, that has the presentations, the slides. So there's one on building your foundation, one on GIS indoors. We're in the current one for mobility, and there'll be one in 3 weeks on utilities. So, please go grab the resources, send them. You can look at all those past webinars if you missed them. And so our outline for today, I'm going to give a quick introduction on what we're kind of referring to with mobile GIS for those that it might be new to it and new to the Esri stack. We're going to then have Clemson go, have University of Arizona present what they're doing. I'll provide a couple of updates around some of the new applications that are coming with the ArcGIS mobile tools, some resources, and then close with some Q&A as well. So I had this slide in the first webinar series, and I don't want to, I don't need to stress it too much, but there's a wide range of challenges and struggles that people are confronting right now across the higher ed landscape. Obviously, COVID-19 could be a really big bubble in this slide, and it's driving a bunch of these other bubbles as well. And the point of this is there's challenges across divisions, departments, higher ed, and some of these configurable mobile tools are really good ways to start looking at addressing some of these challenges. And you'll see the ways that Seth and Grant and his team have started to do that and address either one or multiple of these different silos. In terms of mobility in a mobile workforce, for those that aren't familiar with the Esri stack, you most likely have licensing if you're on this call today, and you most likely have access to everything that Grant and Seth are going to show you. And this is just a sample of a couple of the applications that Esri provides for mobility. If it's just doing viewing of assets and viewing of information to get maps to people and get information to them on their phones or on their tablets instead of having paper maps in the field. If it's doing data collection and data capture, on the far kind of right-hand side, you can see that with collector or survey 123. These are applications that you can get into the field force's hands, and they can go out and do red lines and markup. And the different types of applications of these tools is really, up to your imagination. And so with that, I'm really excited to turn this over to Seth, who's at Clemson University. So Seth is a project manager, and he also had a bunch of background working at the Clemson Center for Geospatial Tech, as an intern, correct, Seth, prior to getting started in your full-time role?
Yeah, so I actually was an intern with the planning office for the university doing GIS, where I took a lot of the classes that the center provided, and that
Awesome.
was my first introduction. So
cool. So, and sorry to, and the one last thing I love on Seth's background is, Seth, your background, you didn't come from the geography department. You weren't a GIS specialist, correct?
that's correct. Yeah, I'm a civil engineer by training, and a project manager is my discipline. So
Awesome.
that's correct.
So I turned it over to you, Seth. You should be able to share your screen and take it away.
Okay. All right, can you see my screen now?
Yep, looks good.
All right, well, thanks, Brian. Yeah, like Brian said, I am a project manager with Clemson University, and I do a range of projects for facilities, anywhere from studies like the one I'm going to show you to building renovations to civil engineering projects, parking lots, etc. And my contact information is there if you want to reach out to me. And the first thing I wanted to do is thank Ward Mitchell, our GIS manager, for his support and help on this. That was a very big help. And so I'll just jump right in here to discuss this project, which was an exterior stairway study that we did for the entire campus, and some of the tools that we used and why we decided to use them. So the purpose of this project was to ensure that all exterior stairways on campus were functioning safely and identify any maintenance needs on stairways, and as well as a timeline for their repair. And so typically with a project like this, we would hire a consulting engineer to come out with the particular expertise and perform an evaluation in the field and draw their conclusions. So that's what we did in this case. And their scope included some planning meetings and several site visits, and of course the report writing. And on previous reports that I had done of this nature, we used kind of a standard reporting format in which we typically had a large PDF report file at the end of it. The data was collected on a notebook, on pen and paper in the field. The PDF was generally a static document. We weren't intended to modify it. And then the photos had limits because of the PDF file size, and were stacked at the end of the report, and key information was often just buried in that text. And there are several issues with this that I wanted to address going into this report because it was bigger than some of the others we had done recently. And the first one is there's a high potential with this method for errors in copying the data. And secondly, the field work was very time consuming on these similar reports. And then key information was very easy to get lost when reading a report. I had to read the report before this several times to get the information out that I needed. And then additional work is often required when we talk about taking the data and the evaluation details from the report and turning those into action items. And then lastly, with the standard format, there's little that we could do with analysis after the fact or updating the data. And so we wanted to especially eliminate the pen and paper copying mistakes. We wanted no limits on photos, and we also wanted to expedite the time dramatically in the field. And we could do this through a number of GIS solutions that have UI features that help us. And then lastly, these solutions can help us have data that's viewable quickly to make fast decisions, and can be used in other applications in the future. And so we used Survey123 as our primary data collection tool in the field. And this is a little video of our application that was created using the desktop application that I learned for this project. And this is very helpful because it can be used by university personnel or consultants. And they didn't have any GIS experience at all. I just trained them in this after creating the application, and tailored it specifically to their preferences. And then, as you see here, most of this is drop-down menus. And so there we could, specifically manage the data to get smarter analysis at the end. And of course, you can do many things with smart tools in Survey123, like area measurements and automatic calculations. And so this is what the consultant had to say about it after using this. This is their first experience in GIS. I had them just kind of summarize their thoughts. And they said the fact that the surveys were developed as code and an electronic application made data collection extremely systematic and amazingly simple. The ease of use has led us to rethinking our process on similar projects. And I'm hoping that will be on projects that they do with us in the future as well. And so another tool that we used kind of midway through this project was ArcGIS Collector, and that was primarily to correct data that we occasionally found was slightly off, mainly the location, and then just see an overall map of our progress. And so now is the fun part, at least I think, and that's dashboards. And we wanted this report to be able to help us make fully informed decisions, and then also enable transparency across the organization, and of course be customized to the specific use case of this project, and with all the privacy and security controls that ArcGIS Online has available. And dashboards were the perfect answer for this. And so in essence, the dashboard replaced the PDF file for the report of this project and allowed for a usable report that could be used for years into the future as we try to address these issues. And so this is an example of it, just a screenshot here. And give me a second, I will pull up the actual dashboard. Okay, so what you see here is this exterior stairway dashboard, which was the summary of this field investigation. And this I made with the resulting data and design the user interface to fit what I felt like our university needed to see. And so it's very simple and very map-centric as well. And so the user will mainly focus on this area and see that they can interact with this map by clicking on one of these data points and seeing the information about that particular asset. And then, of course, we like to have the information about the stairway itself and see the photo, but we also need to know what issues were reported. And so that's in a separate tab here, where we get a photo of the issue and the photo of a second issue and information about that issue. So, and these were what was populated in the Survey 123 application that I showed you a quick demo of before. And so these were the drop-down menu responses. And then you may have noticed at the bottom that these widgets respond to any queries that I make in the map. And that can be very helpful if you want to look at just a portion of campus. Another thing to note here is just that the neat bar chart tools on the left side that allow you to break out the data and see really what's going on as a whole. And then the last thing that I want to point out is we like to have some of the components of a standard report as well, because they can be useful. So in this case, normally what would be the executive summary on a PDF document, we can just put in this little side panel. And so if I send this to my director and he wants to send it to his director, there's a common understanding that can be gleaned from the executive summary and further information on this left side. And so that's the dashboard for this project that we made. And so I wanted to talk about ROI for a minute, because I think this is really important for projects like this. And what we found on this particular project was that we saw about 40% in cost savings overall when you talk about consultant fees. And this was a directly related to the consultant fees after we showed them the new reporting process. So this was their time savings that they passed on to us as a consultant. One thing I will point out is this does not account for some of the GIS setup time, specifically my learning time to do this. And so while my time probably did not make up that 40%, there was some of that to consider. The second thing that I want to point out on this chart is that we had a much greater setup time when we did it this way, mostly because I was learning this. But you'll notice that the results came out way sooner because we could get those investigation field work instantly the moment that survey was submitted in the application. And so this allowed us to make some decisions fairly quickly before even creating a dashboard in a lot of ways. And so that's a big benefit over the standard report, where in the standard report you would have several weeks at least to have the engineers compile the data. So I did want to point that out as well with this format. And so lastly, some future developments that will come from this project and future projects is the first thing is that we'll update these assets as the issues are addressed, and keep track of that so that we can see a map that's got all green, I guess, is the easiest way to put that. And then secondly, we have an asset management system that we will import these into and further track with our preventative maintenance system. And then the other long-term goal is to link these assets to our asset management system with the geodatabase so that we've got the map and the asset information connected. And we're working on that right now, but still a little ways off from that. And then the last goal that I would have for this is to have multiple operations dashboards for building infrastructure systems that are at a common location that key university personnel can log into and view. And with that, that's all I had. I'll turn it back over to you, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Seth. That was great. You know, one of the first things, a couple of the things that jumped out at me was obviously the ease of use and like quickly kind of configuring. I love too how you were able to, and I know you guys pushed it out to consultants, right? So the Survey 123 app and some of those were actually pushed out and you guys just had them log in and use it, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they jumped on it very, very quickly.
Any questions come in, Angie?
Yeah, we have a question about the platforms for the mobile apps. So is this something that is just for iPhones? Does it work on Androids? Is there what platforms can you run on?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So Survey 123 and Collector, pretty much we could do either Android or iPhone. We ended up using tablets, small Android tablets in the field for this. And I would recommend getting something with the cellular connection if you do use a tablet for just that extra support.
Yeah. No, good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, good point on the kind of the small Androids. I mean, you can basically get the same application, and as we've all probably seen, you can get those devices for, you know, $80 or you know, a little bit more, and then get kind of a hardened case for them to make them a little bit more, you know, of a hardened device in the field.
Right.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Seth. That was great.
Sure.
And yeah, if people have other questions for Seth, please just enter them into the chat, and we'll have everybody at the end too for some more Q&A. So now I want to turn it over to Grant, Mari, and James. Grant has been the Enterprise GIS Manager at the University of Arizona for over 20 years now. So he's been in the Department of Planning, Design, and Construction, and they've been doing a lot of fantastic work. And, you know, for both Seth and Grant, I wish we had an hour for each of them to kind of walk through what they've all been doing. But Grant, let me turn it over to you and let you show everybody what you guys have been up to. Up, and you might be muted, Grant. I think you gotta unmute yourself. Should be good
Okay.
now.
All right, good. So see the screen all right?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, super. Well, thanks for the introduction, Brian. My name is Grant McCormick, and I'm the Assistant Director for Enterprise GIS at the University of Arizona. And I'll begin this portion of the webinar with a short overview of the university, our Enterprise GIS service, and the apps we'll present today. So the University of Arizona was founded in 1885 and is located in the city of Tucson, which is within southeastern Arizona in the beautiful Sonoran Desert. Outside of the Tucson main campus, there are 2 branch campuses and other statewide and international locations. U-Arizona is a Research One land-grant university with medical, law, agriculture, business, and other colleges, and has a current student enrollment of approximately 47,000. The Enterprise GIS is a service within the Department of Planning, Design, and Construction, or PDC. PDC is a university business unit responsible for campus planning, facility design and construction, space and real estate management, and the Enterprise GIS. At PDC, the Information Technology and Spatial Services Group, outlined in the blue box, houses the Enterprise GIS team, which is highlighted in blue. This team includes my position, Assistant Director for Enterprise GIS, an GIS application developer, and 2 GIS analysts. And in addition to GIS applications customized for PDC, EGIS supports needs throughout the university, enterprise, and as you'll see as we do a review of our apps. So today we'll describe several of our mobile ArcGIS Online field apps, including a Survey 123 app used for a space inventory, a dashboard for tracking projects, and a web app builder app for updating campus sustainability information. We chose these to provide a good cross-section of how we have used these tools. Beyond, let me go back here. Beyond the field apps we'll present today, we've created many others as shown here, and we're continually discovering new potential uses for the technology. And in addition to these ArcGIS Online-based tools, we develop or support many other custom applications. A few of these are shown here, ranging from public information and marketing to spatial analytics and decision support to emergency response and asset management. Many of these can be accessed from the maps.arizona.edu website, and most are publicly accessible. So next, I'd like to hand the presentation over to Mari Archuleta, who will begin our field app review.
Awesome, thanks a lot, Grant. I'm gonna pass it over to you, Mari, and you should be good to go. And I love, sorry, on your slide, Grant, I love the continuum and kind of show of, you know, the configurable pieces all the way up to custom. You know, we're certainly, you guys have done a lot of great work on the custom side, and that's certainly a path for people to go to. So thanks for at least showing those and some of the great work you guys have done.
Yeah, thank you.
Take it away, Mari.
Okay, so I'm Mari Archuleta. I'm one of the GIS analysts at the University of Arizona. So I'll be talking about two apps, which are the Survey 123 app and a dashboard, using dashboards for ArcGIS. So the Survey 123 app is part of a research space study. So just to give some background on that project, it's part of a project that aims to identify specific and immediate short-term research space needs and interim space options, in addition to developing recommendations for strategic infrastructure investments to ensure research finance and expand research capacity at the University of Arizona. An important part of this study is a field survey where users could log information about research on campus. It was identified by that team that the survey needed to be able to be created and revised quickly, be in a data format that could easily integrate with our existing space database, be easy to use, as it's expected that student workers and others not directly involved with the study will be collecting the data, as well as being mobile friendly. So because of this, we decided to proceed and suggest that the team use a Survey 123 survey. So this survey was created with Survey 123 Connect, the desktop, as opposed to the web version, just to allow for more customization. Things like creating hidden fields and using concatenation to populate certain fields is available with Survey 123 Connect. So it uses an XLS form to create all the questions and choices. So the survey has a mixture of question types. They're mostly yes, no, help with the integration into the interactive floor plans application, which all of this data will be easily accessible to the audience that needs it. And at this time, we're currently not using the geometry aspect of Survey 123. The survey is really just going to be joined to the space database. In the future, when our 3D mapping becomes a little more robust, it's definitely a potential to kind of use our existing room points to then launch the survey. So I'm going to go into a bit of a demo of it. So this is the survey. It's pretty straightforward. So there's a few required questions, such as building number and room number. And within that choices tab in the XLS form from Survey 123 Connect, you can specify these different lists. So if I were to choose a particular building, I'll only get a room number list for that building. Makes things a lot more easy for users. There's just various sections with different types of questions, And we also allowed users to add photos to track things like bench space and other things in a research space that might not be so easily answered with a yes or no question. Part of this survey was to ensure that it didn't create duplication. So there is a hidden field that names building number and room number that will create a unique ID based on. So if a user tries to submit a survey for a room that's already submitted, they'll get an error. So that was something important too, that we reduced work duplication of the users. So that's just a little taste of a survey that we created for a department outside of ours. I'm going to keep going and proceed to the next app we're going to talk about, which is a project tracking dashboard. We created this for our team to use so that we can track the status of projects, new buildings, remodels, that sort of thing at the university. As you can see from the image on the right, our base map is pretty dense, and we use these new projects to make sure all of like what is in the CAD gets translated over into the GIS. So wanted this dashboard to help us track documentation of deliverables and track the progress of adding the new GIS features. So it was done by starting off with an ArcGIS project, which we use to populate data such as when we last checked the document or the project, when if we were to plan document, the status of certain GIS features being populated in the database. Then we take that, join it to a couple other layers, and publish it out as a service, which gets consumed by the dashboard. The dashboard then displays all of this information in a simple way for all team members to see the projects. It organizes information based on information about the documentation with a project, the EGIS team member responsible for a project, and lists projects based on the project manager. So I'll go ahead and show a quick demo of that as well. So this is the dashboard. So on the left-hand side is where we have all of the information about projects in terms of documentation. So we have separated it out of the different stages: design, construction, and occupancy. We have some information listed of, you know, who's the project manager, if site plan documents have been submitted. We have a section for notes that we can place just to kind of help us understand the picture when it comes to if we have all the documents we need. The section on the right-hand side lists all of the projects by the project manager. So say I needed to go talk to Lorna Gray about the biosciences research labs, I could see what other projects she's currently working on and see if I need to add about any of those. That way I'm only bothering her once instead of multiple times over the next 2 weeks or something. And then this bottom section kind of just shows what we're working on in terms of the GIS side. So we can see if, you know, we've finished the building layers of a certain project, if we're still in progress with base map layers. This is helpful for if I were to go out of town and I asked James to look at my projects while I'm out, he could see exactly where I left them. It's also helpful for Grant. When it comes to, he can see a, you know, an overall view of campus, see if to pivot any projects, maybe a building's opening earlier and he can see that we need to put some more effort into that one instead. So that's just an example of 2 of these quick up apps that we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to James, who'll be talking about our sustainability app.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mari. And one thing I love there, and for those that aren't as familiar with the technology, you know, I think Seth showed a workflow that went from survey 1, 2, 3 to the dashboard for a completely different workflow. Mari just showed survey 1, 2, 3 and an unrelated dashboard, but that same information could flow, you know, into a configured dashboard. So I'll say this probably too many times, but you know, it doesn't, the workflow can kind of come and meet the need, you know, you can configure the applications to meet the needs of the workflow, and they're really easy to kind of pull widgets in and change it. And if there's a need that changes in terms of what your stakeholders want to see, you can just add that new metric in there. Pass it over to you, James. Take it away. And sorry, I killed your camera, Mari. I think the connection was a little bit spotty, so you can try to turn it back on if you want to.
Okay, no worries.
Oops. All right, thank you, Brian and Mari. My name is James Wadsworth, and today I'll be discussing mapping sustainability on campus at the University of Arizona. In particular, I'll be talking about how we support that effort using ArcGIS Online and Web App Builder. So I'm going to start with an introduction to our campus sustainability map. This is a custom-built application that leverages our enterprise GIS data for sustainability-related programs, projects, features, people, and more on and around our main campus. The project was started with 3 primary goals. We wanted to gather distributed data and create a centralized data source for sustainability information. We wanted to improve access to and promote sustainability projects. And we also wanted to help students and our community connect with their areas of interest. The map contains a wide variety of data, including point, line, and polygon features that are spread out across many subject areas. So managing this data requires a significant amount of effort and also a significant amount of background knowledge. Our ideal data management solution had these requirements. After a lengthy development period, we needed the editing application to be quick to stand up, but with the ability to become more complex and customized over time. The Web App Builder apps can be created quickly and then customized using pre-built Esri widgets and styled to our own specifications. The app also needed to be user-friendly because the majority of our users don't have a technical background. The Web App Builder apps have a simple, clean, and intuitive interface that was picked up quickly by our partners while we performed training sessions. The subject matter experts needed to be able to manipulate and manage the data, not just view it. These apps are connected to our REST services, which allows users to edit live GIS data. And then finally, we needed staff to be able to perform edits out in the field while they were doing their feature verification. And the Web App Builder apps have a responsive interface, which allows users to work across devices, whether that's their phones, tablets, or computers. I'm going to run through a brief demonstration now showing how we use our app. So you can see here that I've turned on our people points layer. And if we interact with the feature here, you can see that it contains all of our enterprise GIS data. If we wanted to start editing, we could navigate to the edit toolbar, or we can start editing from the actual widget itself, which will open attribute editing and also geometry editing for enabled features. So in addition to using Esri's base maps, we also have our own custom base maps that we've loaded, which improves consistency across the wide variety of applications that we serve. So for instance, this app will be similar to our other Campus 360 application base map. So if users are going back and forth between the two, they're not experiencing any kind of disconnect from jumping from different base maps. And so with that, I will conclude. I'd like to say thank you on behalf of our whole team and to Esri for having us be here. And I believe if we finish on time, we might have a little time for questions.
Oh, that was great, James. Yeah, Angie, are there any questions coming in from the audience?
Sure. So we have one that is, I think, directed to Mari. You mentioned integration with your space system as being important. So the question is, what space system are the data going into?
It's actually a home space database. So I think we previously used ArcGIS, but in the last years we transitioned to our own. So
Oh, you created your own. Fascinating. Brian, can you say anything about some of the other space systems in common use?
Yeah, I think, to that too, is it true, Mari and team, you guys are looking at, more of a custom kind of long-term solution eventually, and today kind of Survey 123 has filled that gap for doing your kind of a needs assessment and also for the initial kind of run on space utilization, right?
Yeah, so the survey was kind of an answer to a need for the survey to be done quickly, as opposed to, I think in a perfect world, the space would have liked to build the survey out of their database into their interactive plans app, but they realized that the timeline might not be what they needed at the moment. So the survey with Survey 123 is them the time to collect all this data and then build a system that works with it. So in the future, all of that information can be logged on the custom app.
Right. And then, you know, to further answer that question, I mean, if people want to get into details on integrations with, you know, AIM or ArcGIS or Tririga or, you know, other space management systems, certainly I've got my email. Just reach out to me, reach out to your account manager, and we can kind of have a more detailed conversation on what you're looking to do. It'd be tough to dive into some of those details here, but you know, the quick answer is it's possible. It's a little bit more involved in terms of how you want that, you know, conversation to happen between the databases, but it can be done, obviously, and it depends on what you want to do with that use case.
Great.
And
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
no, I was just going to say, let me wrap with the final piece I have, and then we'll take we'll actually have a lot of time. We've done well with time management on this one, unlike some of the other webinars where we've gone a little over time. But so let me wrap up, and then we'll have some time at the end for some additional questions. And so the next thing I just wanted to say is, you know, you just saw some amazing examples of what can be done from Mari, from James, from Grant, from Seth. And just think internally, you know, what are those key workflows or top pain points you have in-house today? And what are ways, you know, the tools are there, you have them in-house to be able to kind of quickly build out and configure things to help meet that need and potentially address it. You know, one of the ways that a tool that I've used in the past and something that I have shown to customers and shown to others is, you know, build out that list. There might be 50 different workflows that you start to jot down and start to put them on a simple matrix, even like this, of how easy is it going to be to get this launched? Are you trying to build a 3D, you know, BIM to GIS with integration of your asset management system and work orders? That's going to be a little bit harder to launch. If you're trying to do a space utilization survey and it's a quick configuration, something like Mari showed, that's going to be easier to launch and then start to rank what is the value of that application. And so with this way, that box that's up in your far right corner, what are some of the activities that can fall up there that you can start to get configured and start to get buy-in and start to use some of these applications and get deployments really quickly? Couple examples of these, and you know, the team's already listed off a bunch. I love Grant's slide had, you know, already a list of workflows that they're doing in-house. And here's just some other examples. If it's, you know, transportation, you know, marking out where bus routes are, trying to do inspections of shelters, looking at AEDs, doing your inspections of AEDs on campus, blue lights, map notes. This is one we saw on the utility side all the time of, if I have somebody out in the field driving around in a golf cart or drive around in a car and they see something wrong, they can capture a photo and mark it up immediately, similar to what Seth had of, it doesn't need to be project driven, but it can be. And if it's just ad hoc, you can also start to capture a lot of this information just on the fly. Historical markers, benches, plaques, event planning, it's really, you know, up to your imagination for how you want to take some of these tools and configure them to meet a need. To do a full 180-degree pivot on that, so you'll see this get released shortly if you haven't seen information about it yet. So there's a new field application coming out called ArcGIS Field Maps. And so as you can see on the slide there, if you were familiar with a couple of these other applications, it starts to take a number of these and merge them into one application you could deploy for the field. So if you wanted people to do collection and viewing, in the past, we had two applications that were kind of built out special purpose for that. Now there's one application that will have the ability to do, you know, work management with collection, with viewing of assets and information. And so the beta program is out now if you'd like to join it and test the application out. Or if you want to wait for the first release, it should be coming out really shortly. If you want more information too, you can just reach out to us. So some of the key takeaways for me during this webinar, and this is one, honestly, I think a bullet I've had in each of these, so sorry for that. It's not because I'm lazy, but I think it is a great takeaway of this, of GIS being kind of that spatial glue. If it's in the space utilization side, if it's work orders, if it's work management, geography is something we can all relate to, and getting that information on a map into people's hands can help tie together a couple of these other disparate systems to let GIS help kind of drive decisions and get people to run off kind of that one sheet of music. And all information doesn't have to be stored in the GIS, but it can be an easy way to start interacting with and leveraging your other systems from that one kind of spatial lens. The configure first. I said I would say this too much, but it's a great takeaway. You saw some of the great things Seth did and James and Mari, and a lot of that stuff was just configurations. If you wanted to have a look at it a little bit differently, if you want different metrics, just drag it, put it on there, and change up the way it looks and the way it feels. I already said this again too. Any workflow, is it litter management? Is it campus safety? Really anything that you think of, you could probably grab one of these mobile tools and configure it to help meet that need and help streamline it. And also one of the pieces, and Seth really drove this home, and I love this point of real time. I mean, with some of those stairways being conducted in that survey, if there was a major, class 1 issue that needs to be addressed, right now, they could get that alert and know about it immediately rather than waiting months for that report to be put in someone's lap and say, here are the 5 issues you need to address right now. Rather than that, it's seeing the second someone takes that photo and hits submit, the project manager and others can see that information now right in front of them. So we've got a couple of resources we'll drop in the chats to get to you, and also just some reminders. So we've got the last webinar in our series coming up at the end of November. So it'll be talking about better managing your utilities on campus. So moving from kind of a CAD paper-based workflow and world to how can you start to get kind of real network management, and how can GIS kind of help streamline that. And as I already mentioned, if you missed some of the other webinars, we have the videos, we have the slides, the other material available for you to go and grab and view. We have a website up that has links to a number of different resources. If it's webinars, COVID-19 resources, kind of the getting started or some foundational best practices. Rosemary will drop this into the chat, and please go to this link. If there's things missing or if there's other things you'd like to see, just let us know. And then also, I'm probably throwing you a curveball, Rosemary, but if we could drop in there the MSU case study, that would be awesome to be able to share with everyone too. Michigan State, who we featured on 2 of the first webinars, we just published a case study with them on kind of that really relates to the webinar today of using some of these mobile tools to help optimize their litter management program. And it's a great story. And thank you to that team for helping us kind of get it out to the broader audience. So what are some of the actions from this webinar? If you have ideas on workflows, we would love to sit down with you and have a conversation on how can you get started and even building a proof of concept. I mean, my role at Esri is literally to work with you and let's sit down and say, what's the top pain point? Is it AED inspections? And we can look at how that could look like with a dashboard, what that could be with a mobile tool, and we can kind of talk through what that looks like. So just please reach out to me or the account managers. We'd love to have that conversation. The Education Summit at the UC, the call for papers is open. If there's a great workflow or a story you want to share, Seth, Mari, James, this is open for you guys too. If you want to share what you're doing, please throw in a paper. Some of these are great stories to share with a different audience. Questions, issues, send me an email. This is my direct email, obviously. If you want to, reach out to me and have a call, that's what I'm here for. And we just dropped a bunch of resources and pages and links into the chat. And so that wraps the webinar. The last piece is we'll open it up just for some broad Q&A. We've got about 8 or 9 minutes or so hopefully we'll be able to get to all the questions. Again, thank you so much to all the presenters. Really appreciate them taking the time. Thank you to Rosemary, to Angie, to everybody behind the scenes at Esri for helping out with this. Angie, do we have any additional questions that we could field for people?
Oh, for sure. So here's another question for Marie. What is the best practice for updating the construction project dashboard? So, Survey 123 is being used to feed it, but who adds the projects and the map into the dashboard? What's the process look like for people, entering their updates?
So it's actually something that we already had built into our GIS. Something that our team does is add project points each time a new project is entered into our project management system. We use the project points for a variety of different applications. We use it during like our in progress review meetings about projects. We use it for public project maps. So it's something that we kind of already had. But for the dashboard itself, all of that data is just being fed directly from an ArcGIS Pro project that our team is editing. So
nice. So it's kind of automated to update as work gets done. You don't have to remember at the end of the day to say, this is what I did. Fantastic.
correct.
Nice. Okay. So there was a question about the sustainability map, and James entered some information, but just quickly, James, how does that sustainability data get accumulated? Is that something that just the EGIS team is doing? Are there other people on campus contributing to that?
Yeah, so, excuse me. Like I said, the sustainability data was initially very dispersed across kind of different silos, so to speak, and that each organization and group on campus kind of was maintaining their own data. So the initial data accumulation was a lot of manual interaction, where I actually started on this project as a student in 2015, where I was working with shareholder groups, making sure that their interests were represented and that I was capturing all of their data, and then also scraping things like our Green Fund database, which is an annual grant that the University of Arizona has to fund sustainability related projects. And so using the Enterprise GIS, I was able to compile all of that data into our geodatabase. And then working with those stakeholder groups, we made sure that we were capturing all of the relevant data so that we could serve it in this custom application.
Fantastic. So really, to Brian's earlier point about breaking down silos, really bringing people together and fostering communication.
Yep,
great.
Absolutely.
And so part of that, Jake, oh, sorry, go ahead. Andy.
No, go, Brian.
No, part of that, Jake, is right, kind of, I don't want to say crowdsourced, but the application is something that now you let kind of the stakeholders update the values, and then it's pushing back to kind of one central place. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. And so that's another big part of this, is that we, collected this data initially, and so we were just using the publicly available information. But now that we have this field editing application, we can give them the power to either correct things that we had not properly initially collected, or then also create their own data for ongoing projects, so that we don't have to perform manual data collection, annually.
Awesome.
So this next question, I think, could be answered by anybody. So have you dealt with additions or changes to a Survey 123 project? So what happens if you need to make some adjustments?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. I did several versions of the stairway survey that I had to republish and push out. And that was as simple as modifying the Excel source file on Survey 123 and then republishing it. There are some cases where if you republish, it won't be compatible with the existing data, but if you have to add a field, for example, that's not an issue at all. That will be compatible.
Excellent.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, so I mean, it's as Seth said, if you modify the fields, and I mean that's one piece that's really nice. And I'm sure as Seth is going through it, you say, like we forgot, oh, we want to capture this, or we forgot to add this field. You enter it in, you hit publish, and then the end users have to go and just kind of refresh on their device, and then they'll pull down the latest survey. So it's pretty straightforward to be able to grab it.
All right, and then this last, I think, will be the last question because it's kind of a bigger
Perfect.
picture. For all of you panelists, what areas do you see potential for growth in GIS? Where are you headed next? What are the next projects you will undertake?
Yeah, it'd be great to hear around the horn what people think. Certainly, I won't share mine.
I mean, I can start, and like I said at the beginning of my presentation, I'm a project manager. I certainly want to do this for more study projects and gather more data. And I work with the survey manager who's got really great goals, and he just sent me a message saying we have a huge list that we want to go into, and we enjoy talking about those ideas back and forth. But one of the big things is definitely asset management that we're really excited to be getting into. So,
Grant and team, anybody?
Well, there's, I think it's sort of the same thing. There's been lists of wish lists for years, and things that we continue to make forays into. There's things coming up with the new the enterprise server format that I think there's some opportunities there that we're just starting to get into, and just to try and leverage what the newest technology is as we refresh and redevelop some of these apps. But a lot of the potential really is working with other entities that are interested in getting into the realm. So we've done that with certain groups like the Campus Arboretum, Parking and Transportation, and so there's, I think, just a huge potential for other groups as they kind of want to get on board. And so it's sort of a matter of when the stars align and the right interests align, that we're really looking forward to kind of continuing to expand what we can do. So, and Mari and James, if there's something else that obvious that I'm missing, jump in.
I think just one other thing to add, we've been working a lot on our 3D data, and so getting that kind of into the ArcGIS online space via either Web App Builder or Experience Builder is something that I'm excited to move forward with.
Cool.
And the other big thing that Mari kind of touched on a little bit with the Survey 123 app is that with the space system being built into as a GIS-based application now that's being internally developed, there's just really a significant potential for all sorts of things building on that framework for interior mapping and asset management and all sorts of things. So I think that's another huge area that's just, we don't even really know what the possibilities are there fully yet.
Awesome. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Everybody, thank you so much. Again, Mari, Grant, James, Seth, and all the audience there. So thank you everybody for attending. 3 weeks, we'll have the utility webinar. And until then, see you all later. Thanks.